Welcome back to the Subspace Games YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about some of the modifications I had to make to the code, and I found some bugs. So let's jump in. First off, I want to say appreciate you hanging in there. Well, I took about a week off, had to get some things done, and it was nice just to get away from doing the videos. I enjoy doing the videos, but you know, it is at the end of my day after I've done everything, and sometimes it's a little stressful to think, hey, I've got a video to do tonight. I was doing a lot of work on the game while I wasn't doing videos though, so I'm going to show you some of the things I did. First off, last time I was doing some videos, I noticed that when I enclosed the maze or the level and then I stuck a ceiling on there, we had set it up so that when you go to overhead cam mode, the ceiling would be set to not visible, and that way you could see where the ball was going and everything. Well, a side effect of that, which I did not expect, is that if you recall, the way we're moving objects around in the level is that when we click on an object, when we click in general, the code sends what's called a ray, not an array, but a ray sends a line into the level, and when the line hits an object, then we are processing that, see if there's an object that can be moved. Well, lo and behold, even when an object is not visible, rays will still hit it. So the function call was get first hit collider or something like that. And the ceiling is a collider, since the ball can reflect or can bounce off of it. And so the raycast was not making it to any of the objects. It was only hitting the ceiling. And so you couldn't move objects around anymore. That was kind of a big bummer. So in order to fix that, what I decided to do, I looked at a lot of different ways to do it, and I was hoping there was a way to just kind of make the, turn the ceiling. Actually, now that I think about it, what I could have done. So there's two different ways to go about doing it. I don't think one is any better than the other. You still would have had to do code in all the same places. The code probably would have been a little bit easier and cleaner, and oh well, I don't think I want to go back and fix it, but I was thinking what you could do is remove the collider attribute off the ceiling when you go into edit mode. That way the ray would pass right through it. And what I did instead was move the ceiling. It didn't take a lot of code, it's not a big deal, but in hindsight I probably would have gone and just removed the collider attribute from the ceiling so that the ray would go through it. So let's jump in and I'll show you what I ended up doing. Now, I also did a lot of tweaking on the code, so when we go in and look at some of this stuff, you're going to notice some changes, but I'm also going to address that a little bit later. So the first thing that I did is I went into our code here, and in the AimCam AI, I set up some new values. I set up a handle to the ceiling, and I set up a number to the ceiling adjustment, which is the distance that I wanted to move the ceiling to get it out of the way. I also went into the ceiling and I tagged it with a name that's just ceiling. And so if you go into the onInit method of the AI or the AimCam AI, you'll see that I've added the ceiling, and then we're just getting the tagged object ceiling and putting it in there. And then I set this ceiling adjustment is to 60, so 60 units is what we're going to move it to get it out of the way. And what I do is I just move it down below the level and then back up. And so that's the onInit method. Now the next thing that I did is I went into the AimCam inner frame, since that's where most of our handling was being done for stuff in the scene. And you'll see that I cleaned this up quite a bit, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. But the interesting part is, so down here where we do a check to see if the turn is over, if you jump all the way down here where it says, if we're not in overhead mode, then do this. But if we are in overhead mode, you'll see a comment, it set us up for editing by showing the cursor moving the ceiling. So all I did was do a set translation, and I moved the ceiling in a negative direction, so it goes down by that adjustment, which was 60 units, so it puts it below the level. Interesting things here. I found that I tried using translate at first, and if the object is not visible, because it was still invisible because we're in overhead mode, then when you try to translate the object, it doesn't go anywhere. It only works on visible objects. So kind of a funny little gotcha there. But if you do set translation, that actually affects the attributes of the object itself and will move it. So that's why I'm using set translation. So we get into the end of the turn. If we're in overhead mode, then it goes ahead and moves the ceiling. So if the ceiling's out of the way, when you go to launch the ball again, you have to move it back. So we went to the on mouse button down. This is where it registers the click to launch the ball. And I just came down here again. You'll see this portion right here where it says if we're not in overhead mode, then do this. But if we are, we're going to go ahead and move the ceiling back to where it was. So we just go in the opposite. We do ceiling adjustment, but with no negative sign, that moves it back. Now there's also some cases that we need to cover, like if we are in edit mode, but we're flipping back and forth between aiming and editing mode. And if you recall, that is handled by the on toggle camera. So we had this function that we call when we want to toggle between the two cameras that does some code or does some adjustments. So I put that in here, so you'll see if we are in overhead mode, then there's this line right here that says that okay, when we toggle from overhead mode to aim mode, we're going to move the ceiling back, because I wanted it so that when you're in aim mode and you're trying to aim the ball, the ceiling will be there. I didn't want people to notice that the ceiling was gone, so I cover this in several different places to try and cover all my bases. And then also if we are in this lower portion here, this is else, which means that if we're in aim cam mode and we are in editing mode, then we'll go ahead and move the ceiling down. So hopefully it's not too confusing, but what we get out of it is that when we come over here and run the scene, and we launch the ball, if we go into overhead mode, and you'll have to take my word for it, what used to happen is we could not move the objects. It would just launch the ball again. So when the turn gets over here, you'll see that now I can move the objects around like I was able to before. And that's because if we pause the scene, we go to edit, and we move our camera around. I always hate doing this when I don't have my 3D mouse available, because it's kind of a pain to try and move this stuff around. Well, you can't really see it very well, but the ceiling is down here. It's below the level. So I think that covers that. The next thing I did is, as I was moving some of the code around and making some changes, I came to the realization that I wasn't doing things entirely correct. I mean, you can do it any way you want, really, but it made more sense to me to compartmentalize all the behaviors into the appropriate AI. So if you recall, and you can still go on GitHub and look at some of the, I haven't submitted the code yet, but by the time you hear this or see this video, I will have. But you can look at my old versions of the code. In the AimCam AI on the on-inner frame, where we're like resetting the ball and resetting the chase cam and all this stuff, we were actually moving the ball around, and really that's the behavior that we should expect the ball AI to take care of. So I'm not going to go through every little piece that I did in here, because it does get to be a little much. You're more than welcome to go to GitHub and check out the code. You can see it right there online. But now I've just got this, I'm just sending an event to, I created a ball AI, and we're sending it to the on reset event. So if we come over to the ball AI, and you'll see that we have an on reset event now. So it just does what that used to do, but now I'm just giving the behavior to the AI that belongs to the ball, so we can reset it back to its original position. I also have an on-ender frame for the ball, so this handles everything the ball needs to do on its own. One thing that I did, I had done before, is I tied in this speed. There was this limit, and when you drop below a certain speed limit, the camera stops following the ball, so it doesn't go into that the low speed jerkiness that we were getting. Well, I was tying the ball into that too, where I was saying if the ball gets below this certain limit, then apply some braking, and that was really screwing things up. I wanted the camera to be able to stop moving at a certain speed, but I wanted the ball speed threshold to be a lot lower, so I did create this low speed threshold for the ball. The camera was set at 5, so anytime the speed got below 5, the camera would stop moving. Now I want the ball so that when the speed gets to 2, then we're going to provide some braking. You'll see it right here. If the speed is less than the low speed threshold, then we put some braking on. So that's some of the stuff that I was able to do since I broke the AI out separately. I also have some code for doing the launch, so it applies all the trails and everything that's supposed to be on the ball. I did the same thing for the chase cam. Now there's all this code for the chase cam. I moved it all into there, and also I created the on reset, so when we reset the chase cam, it handles that on its own as well. So I encourage you to go take a look at the code. There are a lot of changes, but you should be able to, if you really want to see all the details, you can refer back to the old version of the code and look at the new version. Or you can like download a copy of the code and look at it like Notepad++, use the differencing or the comparison module in there so you can see the code side by side and see where the changes are. But it's just better this way. It's all encapsulated. I think it makes more sense to have the AI for an object handle most of what the object is expected to do. So anyways, that wraps up this video. I do want to get to doing a lot more. I apologize that it seems like this video is a little boring after coming away from doing, having a week off, but I did a lot of tidying up of the code, and I think it's going to allow us to be even more prepared for some of the things that we're getting ready to do. So go check out the website, subspacegames.com, GitHub, check out the prototype of the game where you can go in and play it. And there's lots of great things coming, so we'll see you next time.